Hello, welcome back to Avala VO, where, I don't really have an intro for this channel just yet. Oh boy, I really don't even know how to start this. I have reacted to The Amazing Digital Circus on my channel Winter Does Stuff, episode 8. By the time that you guys are seeing this is going to be coming out tomorrow. Hopefully this will be posted the night that I record this. And then episode 9's reaction will be posted on Monday. I really liked the finale. I thought there were a few issues with it, like very, very minor stuff. But on the whole, I think it is a massive achievement in terms of like the narrative and what they were going for. And today we are checking out someone who, in my opinion, fundamentally misunderstands the finale. I commented underneath their video and I said, hey, I am very tempted to make a video about this because I feel that you are completely misunderstanding everything that's going on here. At least in the stuff that they did misunderstand, there were a few things that I agreed with. And again, as we're going to go through the video, we will talk about the things that I agreed with. But this is definitely a case where I feel that this person fundamentally misunderstands what the finale is trying to go for. I'm not going to try to do this as like an asshole thing, like not a pretentious thing, because I feel like I've done that in the past and it's not the way I want to go about this, but I am going to be firm on my takes because I believe, again, like it's a fundamental misunderstanding of some of the stuff that's actually happening here. So let's go through it. And what I'm also going to be providing, as you can see from the very top of our searching bar, is I'm going to be providing receipts because this show has a lot of things that were put into place, shall we say, in earlier episodes that this person's review, by the way, we're checking out the Judgmental Critter today. I'll put her stuff in the description below. I don't know if it's she, her, or they, them. I don't actually know because I've kind of fallen out of their content, so I am going to be deviating to she or they. Honestly, like that's what I refer to when I'm not sure, when it's a more femme presenting voice, but I'm not exactly sure. I feel like that's a fairly respectful thing to do. And for the first time in a long time, for those of you not viewing this because of just this, for those of you who know me for me, Lipton, we're back with it. I finally picked up some from the store. So what we're gonna do, away from the Lipton, which, yay. It's my signature drink, for those of you who are wondering. I haven't had it for like a couple of weeks and I've withdrawals. Not actually, but yeah, we're gonna get into this thing. We are going to talk about this because I feel like Critter's takes align actually with a lot of criticisms about the finale that I actually really just find very unfounded. I feel like a lot of criticisms about this finale are kind of nothing burgers, where there are like genuine actual criticisms of this show to make. So I feel like we should just get into it. I wish I had my glasses so then I could look like more of a nerd emoji than I am going to come across in this video, because trust me, I am going to come across as a giant fucking nerd emoji because of how much shit we're going to be talking about. We're about almost 4 minutes in and I haven't actually started reacting to the thing. And I mean, if you're on Winter Does Stuff, you know that that's kind of my style anyway. But yeah, let's get into it. I am going to have you, Critter, because this is a long video, I am going to have you on 1.5 times speed. I do apologize. But I want to make sure that this video falls under 2 hours, because, you know, I feel like that would be a bit too bloated. So, I know that I'm gonna have a lot to talk about, so I want my discussion to be more transformative, you know, without being over bloated. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's go through it.
After nearly 3 long years, the finale for The Amazing Digital Circus has dropped, and it was kind of bad. Like, I don't know, the more I sit with it, the less I like it. Disappointing, I guess. Now, before you get the torches and pitchforks, I do still really like the show. Despite its issues or my personal critiques, I did have a lot of fun with the show. It is creative and inspiring, and I will always love it for giving me some very cool things that shine throughout the series. However, I can't deny that there were quite a lot of hiccups with the show, and this final episode in particular. And it really left the series with me just saying, oh, that was it. But I've been waiting for the finale to come out to finally talk about this internet phenomena. Now that it's all out in the open, we can steer the conversation away from theory and speculation and focus on the actual final product. Let's dive into the amazing digital circus and find out how it all ends with a bit of a messy landing.
So, let's start this video off there. Clearly coming from a place of at least, at the very least, appreciation for the show, which I always dig. I always like when someone prefaces that they know about the show and actually have experienced it throughout the years as it's gone on, because especially nowadays, there's a lot of media critique that is not that. It's a lot of imposters and, shall we say, I know that this term has been thrown around a lot lately, especially, in this middle portion of this year, and it's lost a lot of its weight. But there have been a lot of fandom community LARPers in terms of like people who just don't understand fucking anything about the pieces of media that they're talking about, whether they're trying to farm outrage or get clicks or what have you. It's a lot of those people hanging around in these spaces lately, and I am at least happy, like, you know, going through Critter's channel in the rare little bits of preparation that I did for this, because this is a very impulsive thing. I only posted my comments and she replied to mine only a few hours ago at the time that I'm recording this. So I do want to preface that I'm happy that there is knowledge that is had about this show, however little that may reflect in the actual video that we're going to be talking about. So
I have gone back and forth on how I want to address all the things I want to say, and funny enough, I think the best way to do this is to just, like, review episode 9. Yeah, I'm sort of just skipping all the way to the end, but I think addressing the events from the final episode will be the best way to also address the wider narrative. After all, everything the show did beforehand comes to a head here at the end, right? So let's start up episode 9. I can't deny.
Yeah, I feel like there's way too much stuff in this finale to simply give a broad overview of it, and I appreciate that's what Critter is doing here. There's a lot in this finale, and in my reaction that's going to be coming out on Monday over on the Winter Does Stuff channel, that reaction is 3 hours long, because there was just so much that I had to sit with and look at and analyze, and even then, I recorded that. I want to say I recorded that on the 20th or the 21st. And even then, as opposed to now, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't quite catch that I have catched now. And I am able to interact with this finale in a lot cleaner of a way than even I did then, which was already a stance of where I'm one of those who really, really enjoyed this finale, even on launch, even on that first watch and that first approach to it. So I really think that this is going to be kind of almost like a part 2 to that reaction on the analysis portion, because I really think that I've grown a bit while these past few days have passed, and it's but again, like, I appreciate the fact that it's going step by step throughout the finale, because it's a case where there is so fucking much in this finale. So, yeah.
The parallel everything the show did beforehand comes to a head here at the end, right? So let's start up episode 9. I can't deny, the parallel opening mirroring episode 1 is very cool. There's a lot of good parallel imagery in the show, but especially in this final episode, and it's really cool. I love this sort of thing. It's really good visual storytelling. Well, the episode starts and, oh look!
Yeah, that's part of what really caught me about it. It's very full circle. It takes a lot of the issues that were present in, or a lot of the concepts, rather, not necessarily issues, but a lot of the contents and conflicts that were in the pilot / episode 1, and brings them back here. And I really do enjoy that as well.
But especially in this final episode, and it's really cool. I love this sort of thing. It's really good visual storytelling. Well, the episode starts and, oh look, Jax is doing what Jax always does, being the worst to everyone around him. Ha ha ha, who doesn't just love the funny one, right?
I guess you still get to hang out with Mommy after all, right, Rex? Shut up, Jax!
I think I should make this clear right from the get-go. I don't like Jax. I never have. He is, in fact, a very hard character to like because of his toxic personality. That's sort of the whole point of his character arc here, you know?
Scratch.
Yeah, that's fair. But as we'll get into, that's not a reason to disagree with the writing. Disliking characters and disliking writing are two very different things, and a lot of that has gotten kind of lost in the sauce as it pertains to modern media discourse. and that's something that I need to make very apparent from here, is that this video is titled Jax Ruins the Finale, when honestly a lot of the show's themes converge because of Jax existing. And Jax's existence in this finale in particular is very informative of what the show's themes are. So again, we're going to get more into that, but that's one of the core reasons why this review is, as we say in the business, not it.
Was trying to make a brain scanner.
Oh, surprise, there's no escape? Yeah, we just very abruptly dump this little tidbit on the audience. The characters in the circus is essentially just a copy of the minds of the physical forms who are still walking around in the real world. They are just data at this point. There is no escape. I believe the fanbase called this the Soma theory, because this is basically the same premise as the game Soma, which released in 2015, which means I, as a fan of Soma, has also had 11 years to already digest this concept, so this reveal was just sort of, oh, okay then, to me. So episode 1 really...
This is interesting because, as we're going to get into, this is where I pull up my evidence bar. No, this was not very suddenly introduced. Let us go back. I want to say, let's go to episode 8, shall we? Where we come back to this very scene. There is something that Kane says here that is particularly interesting as it pertains to the information that was just said.
It's a body perfectly encapsulating their mind files, and they hate those too! I'm
To me, at least, considering this was posted 3 months ago at the time that I'm recording this, that's not very sudden, is it? I feel like this is something that we as, or rather, a lot of people in this community had deliberately kind of glossed over. This is something that was established from here, and I will say that it is the fault of the show for not doubling down. Maybe it could have introduced this in, I don't know, episode 6 or episode 7. I'm not going to do the meme that revolves around those two numbers because it's a dumb meme. But I do believe that there was a bit more hindsight to this than Critter is giving it credit for. I firmly believe that this is an aspect of the show that was foreshadowed. And especially by the fact that Kane has been insistent that there's like no exits. And I wanted to also bring this up from episode 7.
Huh? Leave the circus? How would you... No, that doesn't make sense.
We met up with Abel. He said
Escape the circus. That doesn't make sense. And the conversation here is that it's a game. Because, well, no, it's not. And that was even revealed back in this episode, that it's not a game. It's just a simulation created by an AI. So that point of this suddenly coming out of nowhere doesn't really make sense to me. That doesn't track because we've had hints as far back as episode 7, but even in that, episode 7 was nearly a year ago now, or I want to say it was at least over a half a year ago. And then episode 8 is definitely hindsight, especially in that episode 8 was released along with episode 9 in theaters. So even if you watched it that way, which I assume you did based off of your statement of, I've deliberated on this for a while, you saw it in theaters, that was something that was foreshadowed even back then. So I will say that really shouldn't be an issue. That shouldn't be something that you need to deliberate over at all.
11 years to already digest this concept, so this reveal was just sort of, oh, okay then, to me. So episode 1 really set up the idea of trying to find the exit. It was Pomni's only real goal, and I thought it would be a regularly occurring concept. After all, why dedicate so much time on this idea in episode 1 if it won't be important? But then it wasn't. No one in the show even mentions the idea of escaping until episode 7, and they only do that because of Abel's ruse.
The reason for that is very, very simple. It's because everything takes place around like a week. I don't know if a lot of people caught on to what I did, but I think it's because of the drastic difference in time between episodes. But if you actually look at this through a narrative perspective, the entirety of episodes, I want to say, 1 through maybe even up to 6 takes place around every single episode being a single day. It's one of those things where, again, it gets very lost in the sauce because of the difference in time between episodes. But I'm someone who watched episodes 1 and 2 upon their releases and then binged pretty much episodes 3 through 9 in the span. I watched episodes 3 through 8 in the span of about 2 weeks. And then I watched episode 8 a month after I recorded that of episode 8. And it was very apparent to me that this takes place over a very, very small amount of time. There isn't enough time for conversations like that, especially when you're dealing with the shit that they went through, like adventures constantly, interpersonal conflicts constantly. They don't have the time to really think about exiting when Pomni in that episode, in that first one, that pilot, that reality was kind of crushed, so there really wasn't any hope to leave. And it's not necessarily something that the show was even focused on, especially when it comes to things that the show was focused on. That wasn't really prevalent. It wasn't really necessary. As episodes 2 through, I want to say even up to 6 are very interpersonal. They're very conflict driven with the characters, not necessarily the circus itself. That's why we get into the big story events like trying to leave, big quotes there, back in episodes 7, 8, and 9, because that really doesn't matter to the overall story, and that's also something we're going to get into, I think, in a little bit here.
Hearing here at the finale that there is no exit feels sort of flat, because, like, it's not like the characters were really doing much to try and escape anyways. It also makes me dislike that Abel episode even more, because, like, not only was the premise ultimately pointless, but also we didn't even get the characters actually talking about the idea of escaping, even while they were doing that whole plot point.
That's also extremely wrong. There was, especially the hallway scene as they're going up to the terminal room, it's very much an existentialist thing where a lot of these people have been there for years, so there's a lot of gray air about whether returning is good or whether they'll still be friends after. Like that conversation between Zubul and Gangle that's already there in episode 7, that's pretty great. The conversation with Zubul and Jax about, like, don't you have someone waiting outside? Yeah, do you? And then Jax kind of, shuts down after that. And I mean, that entire episode is about, like, the concept of leaving. If you don't think that there are conversations in that episode about them leaving, first of all, you're simply wrong. And also, episode 8 deals with the fallout of the fact that, like, maybe there isn't a way to leave. And Pomni even says in episode 8, I think we need to abandon the idea of leaving, or something to that effect. It's again, this show is built on its characters, not necessarily its events. And I feel like a lot of episode 7 in particular is very interesting, and I want to maybe dedicate that to its own video, because I believe that people completely flatly misunderstand that episode in particular, and the way that Critter has kind of judged it here is another case of people misunderstanding that. It's definitely an episode that was made to satirize a certain kind of watching series, especially that one that's become as prevalent as it has since, I want to say, maybe 2013. But again, I'll probably save that for its own video unless Critter talks about it here, which I watched this video already. I don't think it's talked about here. But again, we might get into it.
But also we didn't even get the characters actually talking about the idea of escaping, even while they were doing that whole plot point. And they don't talk about it here, which
It's really funny that you bring up that.
Characters actually talking about the idea of escaping, even while they were doing that.
When this scene is, in fact, them talking about escaping while, in fact, doing it. So.
Whole plot point. And they don't talk about it here, which is even more disappointing for the finale. There's a lot of.
They do talk about it, though. They talk about the fact that, they're mind files, they're copies, and it really sucks that they won't be able to leave. The first about 7 minutes are entirely fixated on the fact that, oh shit, everything is really fucked because we can't leave. I really don't know where you're getting that from. So.
A lot of crying in this episode.
We're all in this together. We're all in this together.
Oh, this is a thing we can do now. We can just make shapes now?
No, you can make things. And now, here is where another piece of evidence comes in.
I'm still missing a heart. This isn't fair.
Oh, I've got just the thing. Here, take this.
Well, wait. What did you just do? What was that?
It's a butterfly. It can restore your health.
Did Kane mention that?
Oh, nah. I made it up.
And our second example here.
So naturally, he has control over everything. But so do we. In a sense, anyway. We all technically have the ability to conjure, just like Kane. It just comes naturally to him, but requires a lot more skill and concentration for us.
Butterfly.
So, this was an aspect of the show that was, again, it's very similar to that reveal in episode 8. It's a very low-key kind of thing. But it is a fact that remains in the show. They can conjure things through just willing it into existence. These shapes, they're not very important necessarily to the plot, but it is something that, they can do because they have the ability to conjure. And this isn't just something they can do now. It's been established in the show already.
All of them? Okay, sure. 8 whole prior episodes, and we couldn't set this up before now?
I thought I could uplift
We did.
everyone.
You did?
I don't think any one of them.
Yes, Pomni did. That's kind of been, it was kind of a running bit in the first 3 episodes after the pilot. And even in episodes 5 and 6, she's been the person to be able to kind of settle down Jax. She settled down Ragatha and Jax in episode 5. So yeah, her being the person who thinks she can uplift anyone and everyone has kind of been something that's been running through the show. I did acknowledge that in this episode in particular, like the first 13 minutes or so, were a bit on the nose with the dialogue. It's a little bit forced. I feel like the first 13 minutes of this episode there, about like before the Jack stuff begins, is a bit much on the dialogue. It kind of a lot of telling and not showing, and there are a couple lines in there that are a bit wavy to me because they're a bit too on the nose and all that happy jazz. But it's like I feel like that one, like, while it's a bit of a rough line in terms of like the scripting, it is a sentiment that's very true to the show itself.
It as quickly as you did.
Okay, I gotta make something really clear first. Pomni is my favorite character from the show. For once, in my whole life, my favorite character is actually the main character. This never happens to me. My favorite character from Ruby? Nora. It took her 8 volumes to finally get her own development. Hasbin? Nifty, who does less than Baxter, despite being in the show since season 1. Hell of a boss?
Nifty's
Sally Mae,
awesome.
who literally only has like 4 lines of dialogue in the
Sally.
whole show proper. I finally like the real main character from the show more than any of the other characters. I like Pomni a lot. I think she's fun and funny and has a really cool design, and I like her level-headedness, but holy cow, she does not get to do anything in the show. Even here, the most Kinger can say about her is, wow, you snapped out of your funk pretty quickly. Okay, that happened in episode 3. This is why I
It really didn't. It happened, I want to say either episodes 4 or 5. Episode 4 was the first time she got even a little bit of normalcy, but even then she was kind of dealing with everything with Gummigoo at the time, so I want to say it was episode 5 where she really actually adjusted. Episode 3 was definitely the turning point because of the Mildenhall Manor situation and her encounter with Kinger there, and I mean, I don't particularly enjoy the fact that you didn't really reference that because, like, Pomni even says, again, like, issues with the scripting aside, like, this is that conversation that she has with Kinger there is a direct reflection of that in Mildenhall Manor, like the hell that was down there. And I feel like we'll also get into this comment in
liked her level-headedness, but holy cow, she does not get to do anything in the show.
that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm gonna let this keep going because I think there is something that's said here.
Even here, the most Kinger can say about her is, wow, you snapped out of your funk pretty quickly. Okay, that happened in episode 3. This is why I question her statement of wanting to uplift everyone. She really doesn't do a whole lot. More often than not, she actually just kind of sits by and listens to other characters hashing out their own issues. She might have some comforting words, but it's not like she's actively going out of her way to try and engage with the others, especially not Gangle and Zooble. I do understand it would be a bit hokey if Pomni popped into the circus and fixed everyone's problems like a super therapist or something. However, I think they overcorrected too much and made Pomni feel far too passive. Oh.
This is an interesting that's an interesting angle to word that at, because on the surface you can't really what's the word, that rebuke or kind of counter that, but I really disagree. Pomni is kind of the super therapist in this show. She does so much in terms of heavy lifting for the characters, and it's interesting that you say the like she only really listens to people hashing out their own issues, when sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes in a therapy session, just talking to a therapist can help. It doesn't have to be a back and forth conversation about issues. It can just be having someone to vent to, whether that be a therapist, a family member, a friend. Sometimes that helps. And in this case, it's actually helped a lot of these characters get better. In episode 2, it was sort of a back and forth, but again, it was a lot of Gummigoo stating his issues and Pomni just saying a couple things made that better for him. In episode 3, the conversation with Kinger, one of the most emotionally charged moments of the show. It's still one of my favorite scenes, probably in the top 10. It's just Kinger talking. And honestly, it's helping both him and her with their problems. In episode 4, she attempted to try with Gangle, but Gangle refused Pomni there. But it was when Pomni attempts to, you can, like, I can stay and you can go off work for the day. That in itself is like very relieving for Gangle, and it's a trust thing. And I feel like, especially with how this is being approached, I don't know. I just feel like that's very, very wrong. And it's a pretty big misunderstanding of Pomni's character, because, like, you say that she isn't the therapist when in fact she really, really is. And she's helped a lot of these characters break out of shells that they've possibly been in for a while. The only one that Pomni really doesn't have anything to speak about is Zooble, and I've explained my viewpoints on Zooble in my reactions. I feel like Zooble has grown exponentially over the course of the series, not necessarily outwardly, but definitely inwardly. And I feel like they didn't have to have an episode with Pomni in order to assure their growth. That's one of the littler character arcs that I really appreciate about this show is Zooble's. Like, every single episode I saw, maybe besides episode 2, because they really didn't go on that adventure, was significant for Zooble's growth.
Like a super therapist or something. However, I think they overcorrected too much and made Pomni feel far too passive. Hey Jax, what are you up to? Oh wait, never mind, he just abstracted immediately. Off screen? Well, that was anticlimactic. It just happens. Okay, I guess so. I suppose suicide does often feel very sudden for those around them, but like, this feels sort of flaccid in a narrative, right?
No, I kind of disagree with this. Especially because of the way Jax is as a character. I feel like this was a perfect ending for them. And yes, I will be referring to Jax using they or them throughout this reaction. I feel like that is kind of respectful to both of the ways that Goose is going about this, in terms of how the episode operates. But no, I feel like that's a perfect narrative end for Jax here. I feel like they were enough of a bad person, horrible person, as to necessitate an end that is quite unremarkable, that is not seen by us, and that for all intents and purposes is very reflective of their close nature as a person. And I feel like this was the best way to explore that without making it too overdramatic. I think it was great. But as we'll get into, I feel like the explanation of how Jax operates also feeds into that as well. So,
Can't I cry for him?
Finally, first good moment from this episode. I really like the struggle Gangle goes through. She cries all the time. It's literally the whole gimmick of her tragedy mask. But Jax being gone doesn't make her sad. Understandably, he was horrible and abusive. Of course, she won't shed tears over his death, but I do like that later she finally does get the storm of feelings out of her and does end up crying. Though I interpret it not so much as crying because Jax is gone, but rather crying because he was hurting and she knows how it feels to hurt. And it's sad seeing anyone going through that. And I like that Gangle is clearly still figuring out her emotions. Maybe even kind of regretting that she manages to cry for him after everything he put her through. This is a really smart complexity for the show, and that's one of the things that just makes me love it. Also, every single Zooble and Gangle scene in the whole show is the best moments. Their dialogue is realistic, their conversations are deep, the cinematography is brilliant. Every single episode, these two's growth together is easily one of the best executed elements from the whole thing. Their talk in episode 6 should legitimately be taught in writing classes. Anyways.
Yeah, I agree with both of these points, especially the point about Gangle and Zooble. Their scenes together are so good. And it kind of goes against what you said earlier about Zooble really not having any growth, because it's those conversations where Zooble really gets to grow. Her conversation with Kane in episode 3, her everything with Gangle in episode 4, all of her, wow, yeah, all my bad for the. I mean, Zooble is kind of fluid with that as long as you don't stick to one. I believe Goose said it's okay, so that's simultaneously my bad and kind of like misspeaking for a little bit there. But it's very much a case where Zooble's growth as a character is far less linear and far less focused on than any of the other characters. And I simultaneously really like that because there's a great subtlety in that, and there is points for subtlety in an era of indie animation where everything is right in your face. I love that. But there's also something to be said about the fact that it's a little bit too subtle for a lot of people, and I think that's where a lot of the issues lie with their character. And I feel like that's one of those things where it's like, it's definitely a measure of taste whether you view Zooble's character as good or not. Now, as for Gangle, I really like that Critter points this bit out, because this is one of the most fascinating portrayals of, like, losing someone I've ever seen, because, or seen at least in the indie animation space. There have been mediums that have done it better in a multitude of other ways, but this specific character in this specific instance is really special because, yes, as Critter pointed out, Jax is fucking awful to everybody, but to Gangle specifically, as we might even get into later on. Again, I don't remember everything that was said that Critter pointed out in this review regarding Jax specifically, which I believe is the big meat and potatoes here. But Gangle specifically was mistreated by Jax to the point that, you know, she got trauma from him and was like rethinking scenarios in her head about how he would hurt her. And the not crying upon first abstracting, but then the crying upon him getting them into the tent, it's a really interesting thing there, because that really calls to me of the same kind of feeling, and again, this is a very different circumstance. Again, Jax awful, not friend, not family, but it really calls to the feeling you get when you first lose someone and you don't cry at their death then, but suddenly you get to the funeral and just it's all there. All of the emotion that just, you can't resist it just spilling out. That's what that reminds me of. And I also really like the interpretation that it's like maybe she feels bad because like she knows what it's like to be hurt. It's a very nuanced thing with Gangle here, and I really like the development that this episode gives her, because I think it's pretty interesting, and it's not really something that you'd expect from a character that is as regularly soft as Gangle is. To feel such a hardness of emotion like that, not being able to cry, is something that is completely antithetical to her character. So I really like that Critter pointed that out here.
Enough of that really good moment. Time for this now.
I still consider you my closest friend.
When? No, seriously, when
Yeah.
did Pomni ever feel like good friends with Ragatha? Episode 1, they meet, but Pomni is clearly not vibing with everyone in the circus yet. Episode 2, she actively deflects Ragatha's attempts at kindness.
We're already friends with the princess.
I'm not a child, you don't have to hype me up.
Then spends the
One
majority
of the best
episode
quotes of
nowhere
the
near
show, by
any of
the
the other
way.
main characters, and instead spends all her time befriending the NPC who just dies at the end anyways. Only 9 episodes, but we had to prioritize Pomni not engaging with any of the real cast for a whole episode. Episode 2, for that matter. By Kaufmo's funeral, she's found comfort in the others, but then spends all of episode 3 with Kinger. Episode 4, Ragatha gets drunk on stupid sauce and doesn't interact with anyone, and Pomni, again, just hyper-focuses on Gummy Goo. Episode 5 is finally a time where all the characters can interact, but by the end, we see Pomni choosing to spend more of her free time with Jax over Ragatha, a trend we continue into episode 6, where they then team up together. Only at the very end, after a few brief sentences and one silent headshake, do Pomni and Ragatha finally start to kind of bond more, but then we instantly get distracted with Abel's thing, and everyone gets distracted with that plot. Episode 8, everyone's too busy being tortured by Cain, so seriously, when did Pomni and Ragatha ever really feel close? Brief conversations usually bogged down with plot progression, or just talking about Jax. The only metric we can see where Pomni is close to Ragatha is comparing Pomni's closeness to Zubul and Gangle, who never really get to talk to her. After episode 4, Zubul and Gangle get stapled to each other and are only ever allowed to grow with each other, but without any of the other characters. Based on the actual show, Pomni is closest with Kinger, Jax, and Gummy Goo, who is a dead NPC. Ragatha is a kind acquaintance at best, and Zubul and Gangle are still little more than
Agreed.
strangers. To have this big, grand, sweeping hug if you want, it still feels so hollow.
Sorry about that. I had to pause for like just a small second. But yes, I agree with this. This is something that I pointed out in my reaction to this episode. This is another good point because it's like, yeah, I would say that the closest that Pomni is to anyone in the circus is by quite a massive margin. It's Kinger. Kinger is Pomni's closest person. And then I would say it would go Gummy Goo, then Jax. And then, like, Kane. Or, no, Gangle, Kane, Zubul. And again, Gangle's or Zubul's arc, that's their own thing. But yeah, I agree with this take. This is one of those where I really... It's again, like that script issue. It's a lot of telling rather than showing. And in this instant, it really told something that wasn't there. There wasn't enough growth. And it's why in my reactions, I always talked about like the potential episode 6 that never existed with them at the Digital Carnival. I've talked about that in my reactions. As of episodes 7, 8, and 9, that I feel like there should have been an episode there to really help iron out a lot of the pacing issues. I feel like the main issue with the show in general is just its pacing. It's a little bit too fucking quick. So anyway.
Oh, Pomni just has a gun still? When? Like, I guess it could have been laying around somewhere, but why didn't you shoot Kane with it last time, though? Like, I don't think it would have stopped him, but, like, it's worth a shot, right?
No, because he could have easily taken it away. And this is another thing that comes from, Conjuring. Especially as we've spent, I believe this is about 12 and a half minutes into the episode here. We've spent a good while, and it's very clear that this took place over at least several days because of, the outward shots of, like, the stars flying by. We do know that these characters are good at conjuring things. Now they've actually had the time to grow into that. So Pomni just conjured the gun.
He was already torturing you. What's the worst that could happen? Oh, so I guess this is just happening now. 8 whole prior episodes, but we couldn't have set up this beforehand? I have so many...
Yeah, this I like, don't get me wrong. I love the idea of everything happening here. But it was very much something that was kind of just, this is happening now. I do agree with that. But because of what happens in the next 23 minutes of the episode proper, I can forgive it. Because what this episode offers in terms of Jax's character is so fucking rich. It's so good. At least to me.
many issues with the Jax mind door thing. First, we start with a very long montage of the horrible, exaggerated ways Jax sees the others in the circus, except for Kinger, because Jax never does anything with Kinger. And yeah, it's a lot of Jax physically being violent and emotionally abusive, and also, like, sexually harassing Gangle, which makes every single abusive thing he did to her even worse in hindsight, all framed through an odd lens of picturing other people's deaths, like how he and the others might react at one of the other funerals.
What? We can't die from oxygen deprivation, remember?
I'm disappointed. Why didn't we ever find out what happens to Jax when he holds his breath? That felt like it was gonna be important, right? God, Jax does look stupid.
God, you look stupid.
Every time they try to do this wide-eyed, dead smile thing, it just looks dumb. He looks like old-school creepypasta, you know? Ooh.
Disagree. I think this is very much a personal taste thing, and as this is like a lot of online chatter, especially involving like longer form reviews, is like personal opinions, but I feel like this is very much like a bit too much of a personal taste thing to be really included. I don't think that needs to be levied against the show. I myself find this to be pretty unsettling. And so do many people. So I feel like that really didn't need to be included there.
Ooh, so creepy. Anyways, all of this feels really pointless, right? Like, we already knew all this, except for maybe the extent of how Jax perceives Gangle liking him, but for the rest of it, we already knew this was how he felt. He's violent, and thinks of the others as cartoon archetypes because he wants to escape reality. This very long sequence not only adds nothing, but it's also pointless for Pomni to learn. Outside of her barely reacting to what she sees, it's like, well, he's already abstracted. Seeing his deeper thoughts feels like a waste of time now because he's already gone. Seeing these insights when he was still around could have led to more interesting development or conversation with the characters. And I lament that none of the others ever get to really try and hash things out with Jax like Pomni has tried to do. Seeing these scenes means nothing, because it's not like it affects Jax, and there's no reason for the others to try and tackle how he sees them, and it's not even new information, so it's like, okay, anything to reach that hour-long runtime, am I right?
I mean, killing off the comic relief character? What a freaking drag.
I know. It's just not the same without Bubble here, is it?
New sports invented by yours truly.
Real talk though, did anyone ever see Jax as comic relief? He's always been the antagonistic jerk in my mind. Nothing he's ever done has ever been funny. I legitimately don't even know why so many fans of the show are in love with him. He sucks. Oh, okay, I guess that's just over. Pomni didn't do anything to get the key. At most, she threw a bottle at the one in the maid outfit, but then the others just vanished on their own, and then she just got what she needed. She didn't need to overcome an obstacle or say the right thing. She just wins automatically. Cool. While we're diving into Jax's...
So, those 3 doors are a major piece of contention in terms of how this episode explains Jax, and I feel like he's actually right down here. Danny Mata, this boy is precious, and he presents himself very much as like the village idiot of the reaction space, but he actually caught on to something that I did not on first watch, and that made me entirely recontextualize this. This is essentially showing us how Jax's mind works, not in the sense that like he's abusive, but his doomsday planning. Jax has been so fixated on his mother's death and Ribbit's, or potential mother's death, Ribbit's abstraction, Kaufmo's abstraction, that they intrinsically, like instinctively in their mind, prepare for everyone else's. And if you look at it from that perspective, every single one of those doors is infinitely more tragic because it comes at the perspective that Jax blames themselves for every single one of them and is willing to accept the fact that everyone else will do exactly the same. And when you look at it from that perspective, that definitely adds a lot more to the tragedy that is the character of Jax. And as we'll get into later, the tragedy is not a substitute for forgiveness of them. Jax fundamentally off a character. I've mentioned that a couple times over the course of this, but that doesn't mean that you can't still feel sympathy, or at least just a shred of understanding. And that's what this episode seeks to instill in the viewer or the listener or what have you, even if someone's putting it on in the background, which these days, nowadays, so many people actually do. It's to share sympathy or understanding with the character, and I feel like that's a very different thing than actually loving them, as Critter so put it here. There's a lot of people who feel very connected to that angle of Jax, and it's a very prevalent thing nowadays, burying emotions inside, burying loss and regret, and having those manifest as something much more dangerous and corrosive to relationships later down the line, only for that person to either live with that and then realize where they went wrong, go down an even darker path and become a lot more manipulative and toxic, and so much so that they may end up losing themselves along the way in terms of the emotions, or, like Jax here, dying before everything can be figured out. And I feel like that is a very painfully, like, it's a very painful way of looking at it, but especially, again, nowadays, it's a lot more realistic than one might think. I almost went down the road where I died. I've talked about that on this channel once. It's a video that's not up anymore. I've talked about it on my community tab on this channel before, involving a situation I had with another creator, but I've also talked about it on Winter Dust Stuff. I was a very toxic person for the vast majority of my life, and then a wake-up call happened to me. I want to say that was May to July of 2023, where I went through something that should have killed me multiple times over, and I had an immediate wake-up call. And since then, my life has been dedicated around, cracking those walls down, immediately shattering everything that had to do with them, and just rebuilding myself as a person, because, again, I was a very toxic individual. I was awful. I cannot accurately explain how horrible of a person I used to be. But everything that has happened since then has just reinforced that I am continuing to attempt to be better than those mistakes and to be a better person along the way. And the tragedy of Jax is seeing every single time where they could have turned coat, where they could have turned into a positive person. And I feel like that's something that Critter is inherently missing here. It's not to say, like, I vibe with this. It's not to love the character. It's to understand every position where Jax went wrong and seeing how many times that could have been fixed and how frustratingly real that actually is to see in a person.
His backstory, I guess this is the best time to address this point. I miss the way the show used to look. Like, the animation efforts got really, really good as the show progressed. I think the two mirroring shots of Pomni looking at her reflection makes that more than clear. The textures are nicer, the shading and rendering is phenomenal. It's very impressive and beautiful. But that's not what I mean when I say I like how it used to look. I liked it when the circus felt low poly and clunky. Like, look at Pomni's feast from episode 1 versus the hot chocolate drinks here. We went from N64 Banjo-Kazooie-ass style of food to something that looks hyper-realistic. I don't know, I liked it when the circus felt sort of separate from reality, and those little things like the blockiness or low graphic elements of the world helped to lean into that. As a really big fan of old school N64/PlayStation 1 graphics, I thought it made the Amazing Digital Circus stand out, and I think refining all these details, while very impressive from the animation.
Small counterpoint, these are very blocky in terms of, like, the sandwiches and stuff. I will agree that, like, I'll concede, I do get where Critter is coming from here. I really do like the fact that this show blends the real, the hyper real, and the fundamentally not very well, especially in, I want to say, like, those first 3 episodes where it felt the most uncanny in terms of that. But I feel like in some instances it does still carry that. But I feel like some of that charm was lost in episodes, I would say 4 to 9. So I will agree to disagree, but also agree, because I feel like it's a very thin line between agreeing and disagreeing. Like, I agree with some of the point, but I disagree with some. So, all right, we'll call it a draw.
Animation perspective meant the show lost a bit of its pizzazz.
Can't even tell it's not real.
That's the funniest line delivery from the whole show. Absolute
is.
peak. Cosmo, just good character, fun guy. I guess I should talk about Ribbit.
It's a shame he's voiced by Aaron Hansen.
It's neat finally getting to see her, but like I was saying about Jax's mind door perception of the others, this feels too little too late. Ribbit, in essence, just exists to supplement Jax's backstory. She's long dead by the time the show starts, and now with Jax being dead too, it's like, what's the point? I really wish...
As I explained earlier, to explain just, or to showcase just how many times Jax could have changed. I feel like that's the biggest misunderstanding Critter has here. And I don't really think it's a fault of her own. I feel like the emotions regarding Jax as a character and the sentiment of, like, the Amazing Digital Jax show as like the community meme really brings down her, through line perception of what this episode is trying to tackle
We
in
got
terms
this
of
backstory where
Jax.
Jax was still alive. I wish the other characters could actually talk about these scenes. If not for Jax's development, then for the others around him. I get the concept of
I do agree with that, and I think that the other characters should have been able to know, but that's also something that comes around with people's deaths. Sometimes, let's take a media example. Lover or hater. Most people nowadays, if they have a clean mind, would hate her. Let's go to Harry Potter, for instance. Again, love it or love Joe Rowling or hate her. One of the biggest things about, especially book 7 of that story, is realizing that Albus Dumbledore was a lot worse of a person than him as the headmaster he was ever cracked out to be. And there were a lot of hidden details about his life, about his existence, about his goings-on with other people that were hidden from the rest of the world, and especially us as the audience and the rest of the characters. This is a very similar thing to that. When someone dies, sometimes there are a select few people that actually know the finer details where others don't. And I'm not saying that just as a case of where that's a media trope, that's a legitimate thing. I had a family member who passed away a few years ago, and they kept very private from a lot of my family. And I was offered, along with 3 other individuals in my family, to go to their resting place and to see where they grew up. And because it was very much a case of like they had put that in their will, like for a select group of people to see that, because they didn't really trust a lot of the other members of the family. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me. It left me with a lot of conflicted emotions, because there were some things about them that I didn't know, that I just felt like, why would you keep that? That would have helped a lot more people understand you. But especially like knowing how that person was in their life, that meant so much more, because again, like they were a very private person, and they never revealed anything about themselves really to myself or other family members when they were alive. But upon their death, they chose like me and a specific group of our family to know exactly who they were. And it's like that meant a lot more, and it left me with some very complicated feelings. And it's another reason why I connect with this episode so much, because that is something that I went through. And it's very, very eerie, and I connect with it in a lot more ways than other people do. So
you don't always learn what someone was going through until it's too late, but like narratively it feels really flat. Like even after seeing all this, it's not like Pomni talks about these events. The others don't get to learn about any of it, and if they did, we don't see them talk about that on screen. It's just, why bother giving your character all this emotional depth and nuance after they've already exited the narrative, especially if it doesn't do anything to help the narrative of the other characters who are still around. Though, to complement this moment, the first-person perspective is done very well, and I really
Agreed.
love that super long take when it shifts away from first-person to third when Jax is really opening up. Long, uncut shots are so impressive in animation. It's easy to gas up things like when it's a sweeping action scene, but I would argue a long take of just subtle facial expressions is even more impressive, or at least equally impressive, but in a different way. Okay, Jax is struggling.
yeah, I also really like this episode is shockingly well directed. Like the other episodes do have good direction and camera work and all that happy jazz, but the finale is on a different level. And like the point about it being too little too late, again, showing the difference between what was chosen and what could have been. It's why the song choice of Isn't She Lovely is so powerful, because no, Jax themselves is not lovely, but the person that they could have been, if they had chosen any other path besides the ones taken here, could have been extremely lovely. She could have been lovely. And I think that's another one of the things that has been widely misconstrued about this finale in terms of like the people who disagree with it.
With trans identity. It's pretty obvious, from talking about trying to share something personal with his mother who laughed at him over it, Ribbit putting the bow on Jax's ear, we just saw his mind space self's extent of toxic masculinity. the way he acts over being put in feminine clothes. If all that wasn't obvious enough, the literal song Isn't She Lovely playing with a montage of Jax should have made it the most clear ever. The song was sudden though, right? Like, it's a good song, I like the song, the cover is nice, but that felt weird. It was weird. It was weird hearing a real song, you know? Part of me wishes they would have made their own song. Whatever. I guess
I feel like this song, especially when you connect it back to what I just said, fits. What I didn't like, what I will say was sudden, and actually more prepared me for the suddenness of Isn't She Lovely, is the first song, like the montage song in the, I want to say that was just after like the shot of like Kinger and Pomni hands clapping together. There's a song that plays there, and that really caught me off guard when I first watched the episode. I was like, what the fuck is this? So, kind of disagree with that.
with Jax's vague dialogue, you could argue this might be his struggle with either accepting being trans or being gender fluid, I guess, but
Yeah.
I think the thing that people are getting hung up on is when we see their live-action Jax, aka Leroy, who I guess doesn't seem femme-presenting enough to some people, but like, clearly Jax was still struggling with accepting the idea of being trans, so Leroy
Yeah.
might also still be struggling with it, or maybe she's just not posting about it on social media, or she's just still in the early stages of transitioning. There aren't many stories about people struggling with accepting being trans, especially viewed from the lens we see with Jax, where he, in the circus, denies it so much it makes him lash out at others. I think it's a very unique story concept to try and tackle, though I
Agreed.
admit, I wish it was more prominent in Jax's story before the literal final episode. Real talk. I've debated
I think one of the reasons why it's not is because this kind of narrative is very hard to tackle. I myself am non-binary. I think agender is the best way to put it. I don't align with any of the labels that consist with gender. I hate being put in boxes, and I feel like those kinds of traits are boxes that I'm kind of forced into. And I feel like that this kind of a story of pushing down who you know you are inside, but you directly express the opposite of that, it's very hard to tackle without making someone like Jax. They are a very toxic person, and that's what a lot of people who suppress that kind of thing are. They're very toxic individuals who really just don't have any boundaries because every boundary is being pushed on the inside. They're directly suppressing something that will immediately help them escape their own. And it's very much a projection thing, to be honest. But yeah, I disagree with that point. I think this is the very, very difficult story to tell. I appreciate Critter saying that it's unique, but I disagree that it's too little too late or any of those aspects, because like this is really the only way you can tell this story when someone is gone, to help recontextualize why this is, because showing it at face value, not only it, I think, judging by the reaction to this that this has had online, making this opaque would have caused serious discourse, more than we already have now. And secondly, already I think this was, there's already a lot of people like saying that it's not a thing. So I feel like this was the only way to tell it without making the community in already like split as it is.
a lot about which pronouns to use for Jax for the rest of this video. We never learn Leroy's pronouns, but I think it's safe to say it's she, her. However, given that Jax in the circus only went by he, him, and never tried to accept their trans identity, I feel like I should keep using he, him. Gooseworks has tweeted that she's fine with either. I just wanted to clarify where I'm coming from. I have many issues with Jax, but their gender identity is not one of them. Like I said, I wish it got talked about a lot sooner than episode 9. Anyway, where were we? Oh right, Jax is abusing and manipulating people.
So you can pry into my personal life and hold it over my head?
Yup, good old Jax. He emotionally manipulates, isolates, gaslights Ribbit, then after pushing her to suicide, he does the same to Kathmo. Haha, yippee! I sure am glad 90% of this episode is all about this character.
No, it's not even 50. The episode is about 58. It's 58 minutes, I believe, 18 or so seconds. Or is it just 58 minutes? 8 or 3, something like that. The Jax flashback, I believe, only takes about 23 minutes of runtime, so nice hyperbole, but it didn't work.
I sure am glad episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8 could have carved out huge chunks of screen time for this character. Heaven forbid we spend time with any of the characters who aren't raging assholes.
You're not looking too good.
Oh, right, because Jax was friends with Kaufmo, right? That's why he definitely didn't have any sort of reaction like this at all in episode 1. In fact, from our perspective, Jax didn't care.
And then you show the frame where he cares. I don't know, there's... Like, you purposefully chose a shot where he cares. I disagree with this on a fundamental level. Every single time that Kaufmo or Ribbit was brought up in previous episodes, Jax was visibly very much trying to keep everything under wraps. Disagree with that wholeheartedly.
In the slightest about Kaufmo's abstraction in any way. Jax made a joke and then ran off with no emotion. All the best stories have to hide critically important character information from the audience just to retroactively insist that the character was feeling something completely different from what the narrative showed us from before. No, it's not a retcon. It's, a reveal. Ooh, aren't you surprised by our big reveal?
You're not
It's not supposed to be something that's surprising, though, either. It's supposed to be something that recontextualizes what we already know.
supposed to miss me. You're not supposed to love me.
Well, after spending 20 whole minutes seeing Jax's sad little backstory, what
Interesting how you say that it was 20 minutes, and this segment only lasts about 3. Again, not 90%.
does Pomni do now? She wanted to uplift people, right? We've seen all the abuse and suffering, so what does Pomni do now?
You should have just talked to me, man.
Okay, Pomni, come here, bring it in. I'm gonna need you to pull your head out of your ass. Oh, that's it, huh? Oh wow, Pomni, you did it! You solved depression. Oh, just like, talk to people, man. Oh, it's just that fucking simple, is it, huh? I'm sorry, this is so asinine. Yeah, Pomni. No shit. If Jax talked to someone and found a support system, yeah, obviously he would have been doing better. But you literally just watched a whole montage of people trying to talk to Jax. Ribbit reached out, Kaufmo reached out, Ragatha reached out, hell, you yourself reached out to Jax numerous times. Jax has been surrounded constantly by people trying to reach out and show him comfort and support and talk to him. It's almost as if, hey, just talk to me is a pointless thing to say when the person has no interest in talking. The whole stupid backstory for the worst character of the show is dumb.
Worst character is... Wow.
This is dumb. This is a dumb resolution.
Disagree.
Throughout the entire show, characters bend over backwards to try to accommodate this purple bunny jackass. Quite frankly, everyone has been far too gentle with him. They coddle this guy, and it's infuriating because he is a monster, and I get
They do it because they don't want to receive the brunt end of what he can dish out, because they know that Jax can dish out far more than they can because they're not openly malicious people.
get it. Oh, boo-hoo, his backstory was very sad. Yes, I get it. Hurt people. But there is a limit. While Ragatha and Pomni have been trying to reach out and comfort Jax and be his friend, this guy has just been torturing them. Literally. Jax revels in abusing those around him. In every single way possible, Jax goes out of his way to ruin everything for everyone. If anyone is having a good time or is happy, he finds a way to ruin it and make them upset. Every single time. He is violent and physically hurts them non-stop. Gangle actively has trauma about him.
He probably wants revenge, and he's gonna make it painful.
He breaks physical boundaries, he invades personal space, he harasses people, he gaslights, and is the absolute worst. I understand wanting to write a narrative that features a difficult personality, but don't be surprised when people hate the guy after giving him zero redeeming qualities. There has never been a single thing Jax has ever done in the show that has endeared me to him in any way. He is a violent, abusive, manipulative bully, and everyone just babies him. Sure, it sucks that he had a crappy home life and was struggling mentally, but that's not enough to make me care now. I hate Jax. I hate this character. I don't care that he's dead. And the fact this entire final episode, hell, more than half of the episodes of the whole show are dedicated towards trying to make me care about this scumbag. It's lame. There's so much crying in this episode, and I don't care.
You guys keep saying.
This is where we have to talk about something like myself and the collective internet. We need to have a talk about the difference between hating a character because of how they are presented as a character and hating the writing of a character. I simply cannot stand the fact that so much of media discourse nowadays bends around the fact that people can't tell the difference. Jax is a wonderfully written character. Otherwise, you would not despise them. You would not hate them. You would not see them as the monster that they clearly are. You wouldn't. If this was poorly written, they would have been sympathetic from the start. But that's not the goal of what Jax is. It's a retroactive sympathy. There's a big difference between that and what is formative sympathy. I simply don't get the obsession with not being able to view media from the lens of objectivity anymore. I can't stand the fact that there are so many people who view media through the lens of, this is what I want, so this is what the story needs. When, in fact, you can barely write a story yourself. And if you do, you have to half-ass it half the time. I'm not saying that's what Critter does, but it's what a lot of people do. And their sentiment here is sharing a lot of the same kind of speeches that I get from a lot of those people. And it's just, I hate it. That is something that I can genuinely hate. It's when people don't view media through a lens of objectivity anymore. When they just don't look at the writing on the wall or stuff like that. It's annoying. It's frankly annoying and very upsetting to see that media discourse is run through feelings instead of actually analyzing text and even in instances, subtext, to actually get a read on what is being attempted in the storytelling rather than what you want to be told in the story. I'm sorry, that it really annoys me nowadays, and I could get a lot angrier, and I could go to numerous more examples, but we don't have the time. I have other things to do, so let's probably get out of the Jax part, I think.
Dang, we're all in this together.
Why is the color coming back to the circus? Where'd all these blankets come from? Oh boy, now that the stupid
Blankets probably came from their rooms, but also Conjuring.
Jax part of the episode is over, it's time for the stupid Kane part of the episode. Surprise! Kane is alive? How? I don't know. Despite being an hour long, we just couldn't find the time to bother explaining anything. Is it because it's the Void? Is that why he's still alive? Maybe. 8 whole prior episodes, and we couldn't be bothered to set any of this up in any way? Really? Did you need more episodes?
No. Let me break this down for people as simply as possible. Kane is an AI. And within the AI, there was a simulation. And as Kinger pointed out, that simulation, that AI was on a computer. Kane was deleted with the delete button. That sends things to the recycle bin. Are things in the recycle bin permanently deleted? No. The Void is the metaphorical recycling bin of the circus. That's the best way I can put it. And if you view it through that lens, there is absolutely no issue here.
Honestly, I think the show would have benefited from way more episodes. Don't get me wrong, I really love succinct, smaller narratives with one-season stories. Madoka Magica, Cowboy Bebop, and Over the Garden Wall are some of the first ones to come to mind. Also, the fact it took 3 years just to get 9 episodes means there's a chance more and more people would lose interest if it took even longer than that to continue the narrative.
Yeah, I've talked about this before. I talked about this in my episodes 7, 8, and 9 react. This is what I was talking about earlier. I talked about how I wanted there to be an episode between what we now have as episodes 5 and 6. Kane mentioned, 5 and 6. Kane mentioned in episode 7 that they haven't visited like the Digital Lake or the Digital Carnival. I thought that like that lost episode 6, as I call it, could have taken place in the Digital Carnival, as Pomni was getting to be closer with Jax, but it also could have focused on like her relationships with everyone else, and then made the confrontation with Jax in episode 6 land a lot harder, because that relationship actually would have been developed. Every relationship would have been developed in that episode. I feel like that was just a fundamental missed opportunity, and yes, the pacing of this show does fly by. There's only about, I want to say, I want to say there's only about 5 hours of this show, and that is not enough to tell as compelling of a story as they wanted to. I feel like there are a modicum of problems with this show, but there's a lot of people focusing on the wrong things.
But also, like, you could have had as many episodes as you wanted. Not only because Glitch is indie, so they could have whatever schedule or episode count they wanted to do, but also, The Amazing Digital Circus is huge. It gets millions and millions of views. There's merch everywhere. It's their biggest, most famous cash cow. It would have been a fine financial decision to keep it going longer too, if they wanted. But more importantly, man, these characters just needed more time together. I feel so bad for people whose favorites are Zubul or Gangle, because they get absolutely shafted. Ragatha too, to a degree as well. So yeah, Kane is here.
Say walk, 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 walk.
Kane's whole shift into, I'ma start torturing character knew in episode 8 was weird and sudden. Like, there were little glimpses here or there of him being upset with the whole, like, glowy eye thing, but him deciding to actually hurt them really felt like it came out of nowhere. So I guess at least him coming back out of nowhere is on theme. I don't think him...
Again, not out of nowhere if you actually read into what the circus is and what the show is in that aspect.
Discovering the internet needed to take 10 minutes, though. Jeez Louise. Hey, quick question. What the hell was that? Did Kane bring Scratch back from being abstracted? We see him on the stage, but then he never comes back or anything. I saw some people saying Kane put him in his own separate circus. Why?
Those people are so wrong.
Why? Why didn't he do that with all the other abstracted people? If he did, why not show us? Especially after all of that Jax stuff we just did. What was this? Why did this happen? What was the point? Is Scratch just stuck in the circus again, but now somewhere else all by himself? What was this? I don't understand.
So this is something that, again, also from Danny Mata's reaction, his interpretation really helped it out for me. But this, I don't know why I'm taking that off. It's kind of hot in here right now. I suppose that's why I'm taking it off. That's definitely a flashback and flash forward. It's Kane retracing his steps from where he originally came from in the circus, and this is like flashing back to when he first formed Scratch out of the mind files, and that's why like the circus mind files were in Kane's run as it was presented in like just the circle with the legs and the code, and whereas Kane is actually dealing with the current circus member names and the internet connection there. So I feel like that one is pretty easily misconstrued. I've seen a lot of people react very differently to that and think like it's another circus, like teasing a season 2. I feel like that would fail without Gooseworks because she is like the glue that holds this show together in a lot of places, so.
Oh, I guess he can just do that. Does this change anything? What even was it? My best guess was that was Bubble, because we never see Bubble in this episode. It's a blue
Bubble/Able, yeah.
orb, so I guess this was Bubble. Maybe Bubble was like the beaten up remnants of the other AI, I don't know. And I don't care enough to theorize any more than that, and the show clearly doesn't care enough to give me any more answers about CNA either. After all, if
CNA was never something the show cared about. That's something that a lot of people get misconstrued. It was never interested in telling anything about like lore or things like that. That's what episode 7 was blatantly satirizing, and I feel like people get a lot of analysis about that episode in particular very wrong.
If it's not Jax's backstory, why would the show care?
Despite all that, it's good to have you back.
And just like that, everyone is just fine with Kane. He
No. We already established this in the part of the scene that you cut out with Zubul saying, like, you put us through a lot of hell. It's going to take a lot of time for us to actually get trust in you again. But because there's only like 6 of us left, it's good to actually have someone who knows how to run this place. So disagree with that fundamentally. Holy shit.
literally tortured you all last time you saw each other. But hey, he said sorry, so I guess it's all better now. They all just win automatically. Cool. I think one of the biggest issues with the whole show is the fact that the characters never actually talk about the things they go through. Tortured by Kane? Nah, we won't bother hashing that out. We'll just forgive you, I guess. Jax, press.
I feel like that could have been talked about more. And again, it comes to like the pacing of the finale. Again, like that's one of the things that I wish would have been talked about more, because I had quite a visceral reaction to specifically Zubul's torture sequence in the ending of episode 8, which is why Zubul speaking up is so powerful to me. But that's one of the things I agree with. I think that there are a lot of instances where this show could have gone a lot better in terms of actually building up the relationships. The relationships we have are good, and I think the show does a great job with them, but I feel like, again, because of the pacing, because it was a 8 episodes and a movie kind of deal, I feel like there are some things that could have been that were truncated in a service of a leaner timeline.
Press the red button? Nah, we're still fine. We won't address it much. Heaven forbid we accidentally reveal interesting insight or have a unique conflict to solve. Put some of
that was literally talked about in the first minutes of episode 8. Don't know what you're talking about there.
Pomni's uplifting skills to use, you know? No one did anything to succeed in this finale. Everything just worked out. Everyone forgave everyone. There was no conflict or struggle to overcome to succeed. I mentioned it with Pomni getting the key from Piano Jax, but it's like that with the whole episode. They just get Jax in the tent, and it's fine, and Kane just comes back, and it's fine, and Kane...
Getting Jax in the tent is fine, because Kinger already said that, like, darkness actually calms the abstracted creatures. And that was already something that we had established with Queenie. It was something that we kind of established with all of them, like, putting them in the cellar, that calms them down, that makes them a lot less rampant.
Whole episode. They just get Jax in the tent, and it's fine, and Kane just comes back, and it's fine.
No, it's not. Again, there's still a lot of trust that needs to be built up again. And, like, he gives them the key to... essentially the keys to the circus. So... that's something that immediately sounds like, yeah, he's actually trying to change. So it is not entirely fine, but it is building to something.
And Kane just stumbles into the internet, and everything is just fine. And no one had to do anything to get a happy ending. There was no conflict. It was only resolution. It's not only boring narratively, but makes the characters feel pointless. Like they're just concepts of characters, drifting listlessly through fluff. Nothing they learn.
I mean, they kind of are. They are fragments of people that existed before what they are in the real world. They kind of are. They kind of are like sampled characters.
Or did in the prior episodes helped them to achieve their happy ending, except for Pomni knowing to shoot out the lights. But other than that, they just had to wait for Kane to find the answer, then they just accepted him back with open arms. Most of the
Not open arms.
important things they did in this episode was things that just suddenly got introduced out of nowhere, like making shapes, or seeing Jax's memories as an abstraction. What was the point of it all? I do like how we never really get a good look at the human versions of the cast's faces. I don't know, it helps to keep their cartoon faces as the more prominent
certainly
feature
a good
in my
bit
memories of
for
them.
the...
So, there is no exit. They're all just brain scans and can't escape. I like the idea of learning to be content with the life you find yourself in, even if it wasn't the life you wanted or planned to have. I actually think that is a very good message, and a unique one most stories won't even bother trying to tackle. I like this premise a lot. However, they didn't learn to love the place they were in. Sure, I bet it's real easy living in the circus now that they have full control over it, when they can do whatever wacky adventure or game they feel like on a whim, but this is not the circus they've been living in. When Kane was in control of the daily adventures, all they ever did was complain non-stop. Every single episode, Pomni and or Zubul or even Jax would just openly whine about whatever it is they were doing. They didn't learn to love the circus they were in, they learned to love the open sandbox they took control over after temporarily killing Kane. It makes it seem like the circus only became easy to love staying in after they bullied God into giving them free reign and after the abusive jerk was gone.
I mean, yeah, because it was an awful place before both of those things happened. I don't know what the issue is there. I mean, Kinger deleting Kane is what caused Kane to rethink everything, and they wouldn't have learned about that if he hadn't recalled the fact that they can conjure, which was, again, brought up by Ragatha with the butterfly. And that whole thing was caused by, you know, Kane being awful, which was caused by them deliberately going against what Kane said in episode 7 of them, like, not really caring about it. So realistically, there is a pretty linear pathway of events that track from the characters doing something pretty organically and with very good reason to the outcome that is here. I don't know. I think that's pretty reasonable.
I don't know. This was just such a lame way to end what was a really inspiring show. There's a reason it has like 400 million views on episode 1. There's a reason it got hugely popular. And this finale was just sort of lame. It was simple, and the characters didn't really get to talk, and things just sort of happened out of nowhere, and it was mostly about worst character Jax. And listen, I really wish this worked. I truly do. I really wish I liked Jax better because of this ending, and it could have been great. I think a story about a turbulent, messy, angry individual who lashes out because of inner demons could have worked really well. A story about redeeming, or at least learning to understand those who are difficult, and hashing out the turmoil and pain that not only they feel, but that they have inflicted upon others. Growing and healing from all this. Sorting it all out, but also coming to terms with it all too little too late. But then learning from this experience and taking what they've learned and turning around to reach out and try to help someone else who's also struggling in a somewhat similarly emotional and violent way, to help save them with what you've learned since you couldn't be there in time to save someone else. Jax pushes others away when things got tough. The crew learns to invite Kane back in instead. Maybe if all the characters got to run around in Jax's headspace, maybe if it acted more like a conversation between them all rather than just like walking through a highlight reel of Jax's memories, maybe if they went out of their way and searched for Kane in the void to help save him, maybe it would have worked better. It's crazy. As I sit with it, the final episode really was the worst episode of the show. There's There's some good stuff here or there with it, but on the whole, I think I prefer it if we ended things off with that ambiguously dire ending from episode 8. For the longest time, I felt like episode 1 was the worst of the show, and it sure does have its own fair share of clunkiness. The pacing's a bit weird, some lines of dialogue are heavy-handed or weirdly worded, not everyone's performances land, but hey, at least it was interesting. In the second half, this finale feels so empty, and I feel like there was so much untapped potential. A lot of the show has untapped potential. Something I and many others have said is that it should have been longer, and I know I already brought it up, but I think even just 3 or 4 more episodes could have gone to great lengths to better set up this finale and give some of the other characters a bit of time for better development, or at least just more screen time to flesh things out even a little bit. My favorite episodes are 5, 6, 3, and 4. You know, the ones where the characters are just hanging out in the circus. And it's amazing and digital. We get some one-on-ones, we get some comedy, we get some insight into our characters, and there are several very excellent moments of depth and development. Everyone gets some sort of moment to stand out, even if it's small. But after episode 6, episodes 7, 8, and 9 just sort of derail for me. It becomes very suddenly plot-driven, over a plot point no one has mentioned since episode 1. Characters get used to just push the narrative forward without a whole lot of new personality or interactions on display. And yeah, a lot of it focuses mostly on just Jax. Understandable given how much this finale wanted to tackle his demons, but also, it makes it feel like a lot of the other elements of the show gets forgotten. Can you blame fans for lamenting the fact we don't learn more about CNA? It seemed like it was going to be important based on how you set it up in episode 1. Can you blame us for wanting to know more about the programming of the AI, about the cast learning that they're trapped in the circus forever as just digital copies of themselves? Can you blame fans for being disappointed their favorite characters become little more than background NPCs as we charged into the final stretch of the show? That there seems to be a lot of untapped potential around just having these characters further talk to each other, learning more about one another and this world. The show has some amazing moments that do beautiful jobs at giving us a look at the characters' thoughts and feelings, watching them sort through their emotions and work with others to evolve and grow, or at the very least, get some emotional baggage off their shoulders. They do such a good job with it. Can you blame the fans for wanting more of that? I will always appreciate the show. The good part.
Yeah, I feel like that is the biggest problem. Not necessarily the plot stuff, because, once again, plot is never what this show wanted to have, or never what the show wanted to tackle. And episode 7 is specifically a satire on, like, at least this is how I view it, and again, I want to expand it into a much bigger video. Possibly on this channel, maybe Winter Does Stuff, I don't know. Maybe I'll use the collab feature. But it's specifically a satire on how modern media is so focused on plot, and Easter eggs, and how little things can be set up to be bigger in the future. And it directly flips that on its head. And I love it for that, because it really is the meme that went around a lot at that point, of like the meme of like Gooseworks is essentially saying, your theories are wrong, goodbye. With that episode, it's a lot more like it's a lot more direct of that kind of a sentiment than a lot of people make it out to be. Like, a lot of people took it as just a meme, or a lot of people got frustrated when it's supposed to be frustrating, and it's a lot more direct than a lot of people thought it was. But I do agree that the show could have at least one more episode. I feel like an extra, maybe like 30 or so minutes dedicated to, again, like the digital carnival setting. I feel like that could have advanced everything even more than what we already had, to a greater degree. I feel like even one more episode could have helped things. So I do agree with that point.
Parts aren't just good, they excel. They go above and beyond. There's phenomenal art and story, and great character designs, and unique set pieces, and truly, this show has some amazing things with its visual storytelling and cinematography. So it's a shame the finale was a bust, but that doesn't mean the journey to get here wasn't still worth the ride. Shout out to my $10 patrons.
Yeah, we're not going to go through that. They're not my patrons. I don't have to care about them. I feel like this show is very polarizing, especially in this finale, because it doesn't focus on the things that people wanted it to. When in reality, that's not actually a problem. The show did exactly what it wanted to do. It did what it set out to do. And just because you don't enjoy what it set out to do, doesn't mean you have to shit on it for not being what you wanted it to be. And just because you don't like the way certain things are presented, that doesn't mean it's bad writing. It doesn't mean it's clunky. It just means that it's not to your taste. And I feel like a lot of modern media discourse needs to get away from the idea that it is. I just feel like this video is kind of a microcosm where I agree with some of these things. I think I actually agreed with a lot more of this than I actually went into expecting, like talking about it to dislike. But it's very much like, just because it's not to your taste doesn't mean it's not good. And Jax, especially, reinforces a lot of the themes of the show. That connection is what makes us people. It's what makes us human. It's what brings us together. And Jax is the cautionary tale of not connecting with people, especially under immense mental turmoil. So, yeah, I think I've said all I wanted to with this one. I'm going to edit this down real quick. I might not cut out very much. I'm just going to post this because I did say I would upload it tonight. So, that's going to be about it for me. Peace, everybody. In due time. Bye-bye.